Hi, this is Jorge Usabiaga, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create a destructible mesh. The first thing that you need to do is enable the Apex Destruction plugin. So go to Edit Plugins, search for Apex, and make sure that this is enabled. If not, enable it, and then you'll have to reopen the editor. Okay. Once the Apex Destruction plugin is enabled, go into the content browser and find a mesh that you want to fracture. So select it, right click, and then you have the option here to create destructible mesh. This opens this new editor. In this editor, the first thing that we need to notice here, but if things move too fast, when you navigate in the editor, remember that you can always right click and use the scroll wheel in your mouse to increase or decrease the resolution, right? So it moves more slowly. Now, the first thing you notice here is that we only have one depth level, which is depth 0, and this is the default mesh, right? The cylinder. If you click on it, you see the collision box, which is a simple bounding box. On the right hand side here, we have some fracture settings that we need to change before we actually fracture the mesh. The first one is the cell site count, which is set to 25, is the number of chunks that will be produced by the fracturing. And so if you set it to 25, which is the default, and then you click fracture mesh, what you see is how the mesh is fractures, right? If you don't like for whatever reason the pattern in which it fractures, you could always change the random seed, which is used by the pseudo random number generator. So if you use the same seed, you will always get the same result. But if you change it to something else and click on fracture mesh, then you get a different result. If you go back to 0 again, you will get the same result as the first time around. Okay, and if you slide this bar here, explode amount, it separates the chunks so you can better see them. Now, if you select one of the chunks, you see the collision box that this is being generated for that specific chunk, that it will be used by the physics engine for collisions. Okay. Now, if we want it to fracture, we need to go to destructible settings and enable impact damage. So we do this, we save, and we go to our level. We're gonna drag the original object was the shape underscore cylinder, and when we selected the create destructible mesh, this other object was created, which has the DM appendix at the end for destructible mesh. So we drag and drop this one here to the level. We put it there so easy to see, and we play, and nothing happens because we haven't enabled physics. So we go here, select the object, and on the details panel we go and check the simulate physics option, and we play. Now it falls, and you see how it fractures, right? It doesn't fracture very much because it's not a big fall. So let's make it, let's raise it a little bit, and do it again, and there you see how it fractures. Okay, so what we want to do now is create an explosion. So what we can do now is, if you select this object here in the panel and do add a blueprint for it, you need to specify where you want this blueprint to be stored, and this is going to be the name that it has with the blueprint suffix at the end, right? Actually, let's put it here. Since I had already tried this before, let's put the blueprint prefix instead. Okay, so we do this, we create it, and now in the construction script we see this is the only object that this actor has. So what we want to do, we go here to the event graph. We're not going to use any of these guys, so let's just remove them. And if you right click and type on fracture, you have here this add-on component fracture. All right. And then select this guy again and do add radial impulse. Okay. and we're going to connect these two together. Okay, so this event, the on component fracture, is called when the fracture occurs. The fracture is going to occur because of the impact of when the cylinder hits the floor, right? So when the fracture occurs, this event is called, and what we want to do now is apply an impulse so the chunks are launched, radially away from the center of the cylinder, right? So we're going to apply this impulse at the current world location of the cylinder here. Okay. Important here is the strength. Let's say that we apply, let's say 10,000. 10,000 is the impulse value. And then the radius here, let's say that we make this 100. Okay, so let's compile it. Store this tab over here, and let's see what happens when it falls. Boom, you see how it explodes, right? As soon as it hits the floor, it fractures, and then we apply this radial impulse, which, it looks like it is too much of the impulse because it sends all of the chunks so far away. It was 10,000, so let's make it 2,000. And let's compile it and try it again. Okay, so we see now that the chunks, those don't end up so far away from the point of impact with the floor, right? So what we want to do now is have these chunks disappear over time, right? So once the mesh fractures, what we have is debris, right? So the first thing we need to do here, we see this under destructible settings, we have these flags, and then this hierarchy depth, right? So what we want to do is enable debris, right? Once debris is enabled, if we now enable debris timeout, what we are telling the engine is to remove some of these chunks based on the time that since the fracture occurs, right? So here we have these two other configuration values. This is the minimum lifetime of each that the chunk could have, which is 1, or the max, which is 10, right? So if we save now, what it should happen is that the chunks disappear within 10 seconds. Okay? So keep our fingers crossed. So something is not working. So let's go back into the destructible mesh, right? We could lower it. It was too long to wait to find out that this didn't work, that for one. But two, we have the timeout enabled. We have the enable degrees enabled, but I had to change here the breadth depth, which is the hierarchy depth at which chunks are considered to be debris. So remember that we had here the 0 is the original mesh, and 1 it is the broken up, the fracture mesh. So let's set this to 1. Okay, oops, come on. Okay, save it, try again, and we set it to 3 seconds, so we should find out whether it works faster than before. Okay, now we see how it disappears. Okay. Well, so this is it for this tutorial. Thank you.